Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your day to meet with Justin and I. I'm here with Justin Roberts. He's the Director of Product at GitKraken, and I'm Manning Fisher, the Creative Director for GitKraken. We're going to talk to you today about design being the difference, why UX and UI are vital in creating great developer experiences. So thank you, Justin. I'm really interested to get some of your thoughts and try to unpack some of this material with you today. I'll just go ahead and kick this off with why is design so critical for the developer experience?
Yeah, I think when I think back to like typical developer tools, tools that were designed 10, 15, 20 years ago, good design is not really a word that jumps out to me. I think that they were typically designed to be purely functional, right? They had a very specific task they were trying to solve, and it was just, how can we do that in the easiest way possible or the most efficient way possible? And efficiency is totally still a major factor in considering designing developer tools, but I think that developers still do appreciate good design. Whether they can articulate what good design is or not, they do know when a product is designed with care, when it looks good, when it feels good, and when it is also efficient. I think those are all things that kind of can be encompassed in really good design.
Yeah, I really appreciate that answer there. And I'm curious, from your perspective, what is it like to design tools that will be used by literally millions of developers around the world? And is there ever a moment or in a release when you're introducing a meaningful user experience change that you panic before launch or delivery?
Not a lot of panic, but there's definitely concern that we're doing things the right way. I would say, first off, like it's super rewarding to be able to build tools and applications and anything that millions of people are going to touch and use every day. I think we have a big responsibility to do that right. But when you know that there are that many people using it, you take a lot more care and put a lot more thought into the decisions that you make whenever you're building things. And luckily, we have a lot of really adoring fans who use our products, who love our products, and talk about that every day. We get feedback from users in multiple channels on Twitter, through our internal systems, from people who just write to tell us like how much they really like using the product. We also get the opposite. We get people who are critical, but that's good. I mean, I think that helps us continue to iterate and improve on what we're building. But when you do ultimately build those things and you see the impact that it has on people and their day-to-day lives, and you see that it's actually making things work better for them and giving them a better experience with something that's as complicated as Git, then I think that that's super rewarding.
Yeah, I love your point about having a bias for action. And in your previous comment about any bit of data, whether it's positive or negative, is good to take that feedback, and then you can help apply it to lessons learned and knowledge gained with how you build moving forward.
Yeah, definitely.
Very cool. Developers are famous for being very demanding. They're an exacting audience. So what's your favorite part about building products for that developer audience? And what's your least favorite part?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of my favorite and least favorite parts maybe is that developers are incredibly honest and straightforward with their responses. Developers are not going to sugarcoat how they feel about your product, right? They're going to be brutally honest, and they're going to give you the exact feedback that you need to fix problems or to make things better. But luckily, most of that feedback is constructive. They know exactly what to say, what to point out, because they build software themselves. So they understand what it is that you're looking for to help improve the product. So I think we have an advantage, and that's one of the nice things in building developer tools, is that the developers are going to understand our plight the same way that we understand their plight. We're trying to help their day-to-day life, and they know what we need to do to improve the products for them. So it's nice having an audience that can clearly articulate what exactly it is that they need. But they do have they are demanding, right? As anyone should be when they're using software that is highly technical and used day to day to improve your work that you're working on.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying about developers specifically being very opinionated. I personally think that's one of my favorite parts about working with them as well, is they know exactly what they want and how they want it. Sometimes it's very easy to take that kind of requirement and build off of it.
There's a lot of design that approaches from the other direction, right? It is much more data driven. It's much more focus on doing a lot of research. So a question to you is, minus just the intuitive part of design, how do you measure the impact and efficacy of product design from maybe a more analytical way?
Yeah, that's a really great call out. We all have this theory or this hypothesis that what we're building is going to solve a problem and ideally surface specific results. Measuring the effectiveness of an idea is critical to understanding if our hypothesis was correct or not. And this makes it really important to be problem focused. It's helpful to ensure that you know exactly what problem you're trying to solve for. And you can measure the outcomes based on how users interact with your product or the software by using empirical and statistical evidence. And by empirical, I mean, if you have verified evidence firsthand through observation, this can happen really effectively pre-release while you're still in the research phase of a product where you don't know yet if what you're building has the value that you're looking for. So you can build prototypes, you can create working models without actually developing them or using code to create these prototypes. You can use static imagery and other simple examples to just walk them through the basics of what your product can be. The other analysis here is, of course, statistical. And this means analyzing large quantities of numerical data. Perhaps you've released the product to a large audience and you can measure how they use the feature. If they were able to find the feature, how many people were able to click specific areas of the page? Did they find the buttons? Were they using the toolings effectively? How much time they spent on the feature, and other analytical information that can be then used to determine whether or not the product that you designed for had been used to the extent that you can qualify its effectiveness.
Yeah, there's a lot in there about like being a lot more measured in your approach to design. I'm curious, just personal question, like, do you prefer doing that kind of research before design or after you've already kind of taken a stab at something? Like where do you like prefer to have that more analytical approach to design? Do you want to know everything first and design, or do you want to kind of like try something out and then test it with people?
Yeah, I'm always on the fence with that one. And sometimes it comes down to budget. Honestly, if you're working for a business who has 6 months of runway and you're capable of spending, several hundreds of thousands of dollars to do those studies, then sure, it can be really fun. You learn a lot. It's a great learning exercise. I like your approach that you were describing earlier, just building as you go and discovering after the fact. It's very fun.
So I think we're coming about to the end of our time, Fisher, and I had one final question for you, and feel free to echo this back to me when you respond. But I'm curious for you if there are any developer-focused brands out there that you really admire or that you're inspired by from a product or UI perspective.
Crashlytics was a mobile crash reporting tool built many years ago. Ultimately, they have over 2.5 billion active devices using the SDK and over 600,000 mobile app developers using the product. And what I particularly enjoyed about this, and this was also very well heard in the community, was their stylistic approach to developing the technology. The skeuomorphism was pretty big during this era when they released the product. So you can see these heavy textures, very large drop shadows, and kind of realistic, the aesthetics being chosen. And what made it even more interesting is they took that technique into the product itself. So you can see one of their main dashboards has this massive zipper and this kind of denim textured background over one of the graphs that, while it serves no functional purpose, it's interesting, it's exciting, it's different. Some people hated it. They were very vocal. Why is this zipper sitting in my UI as like an obtrusive visual obstacle? But at the same time, it created a lot of jazz about it. There was a lot of conversation whether these things were applicable or not. It created just the appeal to the product itself. These other pages, subsets of the product, you can see they're using this clipboard binding kind of leather textured background. And ultimately, over the years, the product evolved and turned into a more flat kind of modern interface. But also what was most interesting from my perspective in the users is that we use data to show things chronographically as often as possible. So while most software is typically just a bunch of pages full of tables and tabular data, what makes it interesting to look at emotionally is to have this massive graphic at the top that shows information in a different way. It's appealing on the eye, it's fun to use in general, and it helps serve a function for people to analyze information graphically within a product. And in order for us to get there, we studied different variations of information display, dashboard techniques, just how to show visual data visually in a way that was effective and appealing to the user. What are some of your experiences with brands that you admire or you're inspired by with their great UX?
Yeah. I mean, I think like for me, one of the kind of like pinnacles is GitHub, right? You know, they really take a lot of care when they design their interfaces, and you can see that in their design team and their design systems that they build. They have an open source design system called Primer that, you know, kind of breaks down everything that is involved in the GitHub design system. And I think it just shows that they care enough about design for a technical audience that they put the effort into creating these experiences and using color and typography and spacing and everything to really make a product that people are going to like to use and is also highly functional, right? It's that good blend of form and function where it's not going to slow you down, it's not going to get in the way, but it's also going to have a positive impact on you. One other one that I've really been enjoying following is Linear app, which is an issue tracking software. I think that, you know, when you talk about minimalism and building a product that kind of strips away everything that you don't need and only shows you things that you need, that is embedded in everything that Linear does. The website, the product itself are really clear, really easy to use. And you can tell that they're also really targeted at developers. If you use Linear, you can see the way that they design their menus to show shortcut keys and the way that they use really simple iconography and theming to be customizable for the developer experience really shows that they put a lot of care into the design. And you can see that if you hear anyone's feedback about the product. You know, I'll look on Twitter and see people talking about Linear that are just saying like, oh, this is a really amazing piece of software to use. I love using Linear every day to track my issues. Well, you wouldn't really think that like people would feel that way about an issue tracker, but when you take care in crafting an application and an experience and using design to make that really impact people, you're going to see that kind of response. And I think that's what we're all striving for, right? Is to take that care in designing a tool that people are going to love enough to get onto Twitter and say like, oh man, I really love using this product.
Yeah, that's an excellent analysis. And I particularly enjoy the synthesis that you've had there, specifically with both of those products. And I use them myself quite often. So I can respect the breakdown that you've given.
Yeah, it was really good.
Justin, it's likewise. It's been great. I appreciate your time today and look forward to seeing you on the other side, my friend.
All right. Have a good one.
Cheers.